What's going on, guys? It's Analyst, and we're back for week 4. We got some exciting matchups this week, including starting off on Thursday night with my boy Joe Mixon. I just want to give you guys a fair warning. I have had a little bit of a cough. It's literally just started like 5-10 minutes before I started recording this, so I hope I'll be able to make it through it okay. But I got my notes here. We got all the matchups. We got the spreads. We got the totals. We're going to talk about everything that's going on. And so I hope you guys are excited. Let's get into it. And we're just going to jump straight into this. So Cincinnati starts it off Thursday night at home hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is this year's number 1 pick versus last year's number 1 pick. Pretty exciting stuff. As far as Joe Burrow goes, I mean, we're going to start home team and away team. I think that's a more fair way of doing this, right? So Joe Burrow, I don't hate him in this matchup. T. Higgins has already been ruled out, and I'm recording this Wednesday. I always record this Wednesday nights. So usually on the Sunday and Monday games, there might be some extra guys who are out who I don't really get to cover. But for the most part, like in this game, we know tomorrow T. Higgins is going to be out, and I believe there's some defensive players out for Cincinnati as well, but for Burrow, it's an easy matchup against Jacksonville. I mean, their secondary is awful. They literally just traded away like their first-round corner from last year for a tight end and a third-round pick, but, still. So I think Joe Burrow is definitely streamable in this matchup. I want to see him get more comfortable in the pocket, and I want to see him get more comfortable behind that awful offensive line before we actually trust in him on a week-to-week basis. So as of right now, Joe Burrow is a streamer, nothing more. Joe Mixon, right? Last week he was able to just do enough to get you past the week. The week before wasn't great. Week 1 he started off with a huge game, last year against the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you had Joe Mixon, you remember this game. You remember he had 25 carries for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, topped with 6 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown in the air, totaling 42.1. fantasy points. Joe Mixon had himself a day against the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, and if anything, their defense has really only gotten worse. They're ranked 27th at defending against running backs. So, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 6th or 7th worst defense for running backs, which is good news for Mixon. Mixon is a strong start this week. I think I'm a top 5 running back. He's still getting a ton of carries. He's still getting some targets. His targets have gone down a little bit, which is a little concerning. But for the most part, he's getting a ton of carries on the ground. And, especially in this matchup, he's definitely top 5, top 10 running back. I have him as a top 5 guy. Wide receivers, I mentioned T. Higgins being out, which leaves a lot of opportunity for Boyd and Chase with a great matchup as well. I mean, the Jaguars' defense is just not good. So, Jamar Chase has 4 touchdowns in 3 games so far this season. And it's interesting because within those 3 games, he's had at least one touchdown from 30 yards out. So in the week 1, he scored a 50-yard touchdown. In week 2, he scored a 42-yard touchdown. And in week 3, he scored a 34-yard touchdown. I mean, this dude and his chemistry with Joe Burrow is really coming to fruition at the end of these games. So especially with T. Higgins out, you cannot sit Jamar Chase in this matchup. Tyler Boyd, 33.3% target share last week, and he caught a touchdown. So Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, both very startable this week. No tight ends worth talking about here. Trevor Lawrence, borderline streamable. The Cincinnati defense isn't anything special, but Trevor Lawrence has not looked good to start off his rookie career. We'll just kind of say that. So I'm not in huge favor of starting Trevor Lawrence in this game. Running back wise, James Robinson, he's been a concern for some people, but he is on the rise. He went from 8 touches in week 1 to 14 touches in week 2 to 21 touches last week. So he's trending in the right direction. He played roughly 60% of the snaps last week, and he had 6 targets in back-to-back weeks. So James Robinson's usage is going up. Carlos Hyde is still a little bit of a thorn in his side, but Robinson is working into more and more being the main running back there. So James Robinson is now startable again. As far as startable in this offense, DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault just cannot be trusted right now. Both are just complete upside plays. Laviska got some targets early, but last week, the targets kind of fell off. He's not getting as involved. He's not making the plays. And then DJ Chark, he's just complete hit or miss. So the only one you can really trust is Marvin Jones. He's been doing it week to week to week. He had a 33.3 target share over the last 2 weeks. He's, I believe, a top 20, top 15 wide receiver right now. So Marvin Jones, the only wide receiver I'm willing to bet on in Jacksonville. I'm not trusting DJ Chark. DJ Chark does have upside, but Laviska, he didn't really have much upside. So I'm avoiding Laviska, and I'm avoiding DJ Chark. When it comes to the tight end group, I mentioned they traded for a tight end. They traded for Dan Arnold, who was with the Cardinals last year. I think he finished as like a borderline top 10 tight end. And then earlier this year, he was with the Panthers, and he actually had some decent involvement. But apparently they like their rookie Tommy Tremble, and they're ready to give him a bigger role. So they had the opportunity to trade away a guy like Dan Arnold. So I think this is worth mentioning, not for this week, but for future weeks. Only because week 1, the tight ends for Jacksonville had a 17.6% target share, 9 targets. Week 2, they had a 12.1, 4 targets. Not bad. Wasn't really a high passing volume game. Week 3, 20.5% target share, 7 targets. That's Jacob Hollister and Chris Manhertz. So there is a role for a tight end on this team, and that was supposed to be James O'Shaughnessy. In week 1, James O'Shaughnessy had 8 targets. It was looking like he was going to be their tight end, and he looked like somewhat of a value this year, but he's on IR. Jacob Hollister, they kind of used him a little bit last week, but they did make the trade for Dan Arnold, so he could have a pretty substantial role going forward in this offense. Obviously, week 1 on a short week is not the week to do it, but he's got a long week leading up to their next game, so he could look to get more involved there. So if you guys are really in a tight spot, just keep an eye on Dan Arnold. That's basically the point of this, because you're not picking him up right now. You're just kind of keeping an eye on him because he might have potential value going forward. Defensively, look, I don't love the Bengals in this matchup. I do think the Bengals are going to win. I think Jacksonville is probably going to cover on the spread, but I'm not really willing to bet on the Cincinnati defense here. I don't think they're good enough to warrant a stream. So let's dig into these Sunday games. So we're starting off here with Buffalo hosting the Houston Texans. So what's really interesting with Buffalo is Josh Allen's coming off a great week, right? And he's got a great matchup here. Clearly, they're 16-point favorites. And I know a popular thing is to say, like, okay, this is a game where Josh Allen can get up early and they could just kind of run the ball out the rest of the game. The Bills don't do that. I don't know if you guys have noticed that with the Bills, but even in blowout games, which they've seemed to have a lot over this year and last year, they just kind of keep playing. Last week, it was 21-0 leading up to the half. And, Washington ended up scoring once or twice before the half was over. But they were still playing hard. And a large portion of that is because they aren't running the ball as much as other teams are. So they kind of get into these passing situations. And when you have all these playmakers, they make plays. So essentially what I'm saying here is even if this is a blowout, Josh Allen's still a fine start. And a lot of these other guys still have a ton of upside. So, yeah. I'm trying to see if I have a specific note here, but not really. I thought I had something down on it. Whatever. But, okay, let's go to these running backs for Buffalo. Zach Moss, he has taken over this backfield. He's currently 6th in the entire league for red zone touches, and he missed the whole game. So his snaps went up from 28% to 56%. His overall touches went from 10 to 16. He's getting a ton of touchdowns on the ground. As I mentioned, he's very involved in the red zone. Devin Singletary seemed to have taken a back seat. And if you watch just any of the film on Zach Moss, he's looked great. He's running hard. He looks healthy. He's doing his thing. So Zach Moss is looking to be a thing this year. And in a matchup against Houston, that's a great spot to play him. So I think Zach Moss is a great play this week. He's trending upwards. It's a great matchup against Houston. So yeah, Zach Moss is someone I'm starting this week. If you have him, you can start him in your flex. If you're in a tight spot in your running back room, maybe you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Zach Moss on the bench. I think he's a fine filler. And we'll talk about Chuba Hubbard later. Don't you worry about that. We'll talk about Chuba later. But in terms of Zach Moss, I think he's definitely startable this week. Wide receiver wise, look, the ball is being spread around a lot in Buffalo. Diggs is still the safest option, but Sanders and Beasley right now are huge upside plays. If you're desperate for a flex, you can throw Emmanuel Sanders in there. You can throw Cole Beasley in there. He's still getting a ton of targets. And as I mentioned, this is an easy matchup for these guys. So if you're really in a tight spot, I don't hate throwing those guys in there. Dawson Knox, currently the tight end 6. He's the clear tight end 1 in Buffalo. He's been dominating the snaps. He's been dominating the targets for his position on this team. If you need, again, an upside play, he's your guy. A lot of his upside plays, like Cole Beasley has a decent floor, but Emmanuel Sanders and Dawson Knox do not have much of a floor at all. So just know if you're playing these guys, they could have a big game or they could have no game at all. Gabriel Davis, I didn't really mention him. He's kind of being left in the dust. There were some rumors going into the year that Emmanuel Sanders was going to take over that wide receiver 2 role. It seems he has. Gabriel Davis is being left in the dust. On the Houston side, there's not really much to talk about here. I mean, I'm not starting Davis Mills. You cannot touch this running back room. There's no tight ends worth talking about. The only person worth talking about is Brandon Cooks. And it's not an easy matchup at all, but I'll take a 39% target share from Davis Mills last week. Hope, if they throw the ball 40 times, that Brandon Cooks comes down with a large portion of that. I mean, he's going to be fine, right? Brandon Cooks is going to be fine. He's going to do enough to get you through the week at the very least. He could always get over 100 yards in the air. So Brandon Cooks is someone you're starting. No one else is even worth talking about. And that Buffalo defense should be the number 1 defense this week. If it's not, then there's a problem. And you notice with such a bad team, there's a 47-point total. And I think that kind of speaks to what I said earlier of like the Bills love to keep the party going, right? So if Houston gets 0 points, they could probably still get that 47 on their own. So that's kind of what that speaks to. Okay, we have the Stefanski rematch game. The Stefanski and his Minnesota Vikings are at home hosting the Cleveland Browns. Not Stefanski and the Vikings. Stefanski and Cleveland Browns are going into Minnesota to play against the Vikings. That's how that works. But look, I mean, Cousins is still causing shootouts every single week. That's just, he's the QB4 right now. He's doing his thing, and he's causing other teams to go into shootouts as well. So this is going to bode well for Baker. We'll talk about him in a little bit. I like Kirk in this matchup. The Cleveland defense, at least their secondary, has not been great. 51-point total kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. Madison, he played great when Cook was out. It was kind of like plug and play. He went in there, he got targets, he did great on the ground. He did everything you needed him to do. So, simple, right? Dalvin's playing, Dalvin's starting. Madison's playing, Madison's starting. That's it, right? Nice and simple for this Minnesota backfield. Wide receiver-wise, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen auto starts each week. You guys know the drill with that. KJ Osborne. He was a bit of a darling last week. A lot of people thought he would have been a decent play, including me. I thought I had KJ Osborne as a desperate play. But you know what? One of the things that the Vikings are doing lately is they're doing a lot of 2 tight end sets, which kind of takes away that slot role. When you switch from 12 personnel to 11 personnel, when you switch from 11 personnel to 12 personnel, that takes away the slot. So with Ben Ellefson, he played 40% of the snaps last week as a blocking tight end. And mind you, Tyler Conklin played 70% of the snaps. So there's a 30% share there where they're basically having 2 tight ends on the field, which means that's taking away opportunities from KJ Osborne. Not to say he's not still a decent wide receiver, but he's not worth a play. If this is the direction that they're trending in, then it makes sense for KJ Osborne to not be on the field as much. And hey, if they're running the ball a lot, it makes sense to have the blocking guy out there. But we'll see how this progresses moving forward. Yeah, so I'm avoiding Osborne. Tyler Conklin, on the other hand, I said he played 70+% of the snaps every single week. He jumped to 8 targets last week. It's not really sustainable, but similar to these Buffalo receivers and tight ends, the upside's there. So if you're in a tight spot, a lot of these are, if you're in a tight spot, just play half the guys I'm mentioning. I don't know. So I mentioned Baker. He's a decent streamer if you're in a tight spot. I gotta stop saying tight spot. Tight spot. Come on. If you need a streamer this week, I don't hate Baker Mayfield. The running back group, right? We're going to jump to the running backs here. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Oh, did I mention Demetric Felton? Felton's now getting involved. This is a 3-way backfield. This is no longer 50-50 Chubb and Hunt. This is Chubb, Hunt, and Felton. Nick Chubb's receiving upside went from like here to like here. It's gone. Right? And that's because Demetric Felton, he's basically a wide receiver. His snaps went up from 5% to 14%. He doubled the routes he ran the week before. It's trending in the wrong direction unless we get to a point where Kareem Hunt is traded, which is possible. Right? I believe he just got signed to a 2-year deal not too long ago. But if they were to trade Kareem Hunt, if they were to do that, then Demetric Felton would have immediate value and Nick Chubb's value would go up. But right now, this is getting messy. So I am still starting Chubb. Hunt is still a flex. But if Chubb has a good game here, I'm going to try to sell him. Because I don't know what this backfield is going to turn into if they have tougher matchups going forward. I'm just going to err on the side of caution, if possible. So those are the running backs. Wide receiver-wise, I mean, Jarvis Landry on IR. OBJ comes in on his debut, only plays 64% of the snaps. He ran 34 routes, and he gets a 29% target share. So they've been needing this type of they've really been needing an alpha wide receiver in Cleveland, and now that they have that, OBJ had his first action. I'm assuming his snaps are going to go up, and he's got a great matchup against Minnesota. He could have a big game. I think he's going to see a high target share. And so I do like OBJ. I'm trying to be a little conservative here in terms of the expectations because he could get hurt again, right? And the Browns are so up and down to the point where they could run this game out. It could be Kareem Hunt. All we know is Donovan Peoples-Jones finally gets involved. Like, it could be the 3 tight ends. And by the way, the tight ends, stay away from it. There is nobody separating themselves. I think David Njoku had more snaps than Austin Hooper last week. It's just so messy. Just stay away. Stay away. I don't like either defense. But, worst case, if you guys don't know who to start, look for the point totals, right? Because if you guys want people who are going to score touchdowns, Kansas City, Philadelphia, if you're in a tough spot, hey, look, Devontae Smith, sure, why not? You know, I was trying to think of someone else from Philadelphia who I'm like, oh, I should probably start them, but not really. Okay. This game here, we got Chicago Bears hosting the Detroit Lions. So there's no official word that Andy Dalton is fully ready to go this week, but he did practice on Wednesday in a limited fashion. Justin Fields practiced in full for whatever that's worth, but typically when you practice on a Wednesday, it means you're going to play, right? So if you don't, like, Wednesdays are considered veteran days off for a lot of people. Like, if you don't practice Wednesday, it's not a big deal. If you practice Thursday and Friday, that's good. If you don't practice until Friday, then you're probably more so questionable. If you don't practice at all during the week, it's unlikely you're going to play. But Wednesdays, if a player is practicing, that's usually a pretty good indicator that they are going to play. Andy Dalton did practice. It seems like he's going to start this week. As for everybody else in Chicago, look, David Montgomery's kind of getting back into that workhorse role that he had last year. He went from 59% of the snaps in week 1 to 80% of the snaps to 82% of the snaps. He had 4 targets in back-to-back weeks, and that was better than his week 1 when Damian Williams was playing like 40% of the snaps. So it really does seem like Dave Montgomery's kind of embracing that role. Detroit has they aren't as bad as it makes it out to be in terms of rushing defense, but they're definitely not good. So Dave Montgomery definitely worth a start in this week. Wide receiver wise, we're assuming this is going to be Andy Dalton. A-Rob had a 30% target share last year. The Detroit secondary is decimated right now. If Marquise Brown remembered how to catch a football, he would have had like 3 touchdowns last week. So don't let last week fool you with the lack of receiver production. This is still a game where Allen Robinson can have a good game. Darnell Mooney is flex worthy, but for the most part, that seems to be about it. Cole Kmet has not established himself yet to a point where I'm comfortable starting him. Detroit side, look, kind of sweet and simple. Jared Goff, not really interested. Swift is embracing that running back one role, and apparently he's fully healthy. And one of the things that Dan Campbell and Anthony Lynn had said is once he's fully healthy, they might ramp up his work. So we could see Swift take another step up from where he is now. So get ready. We might have a workhorse. This is not going to be, it's not going to be a hot hand as it has been. It's going to be 1A, 1B, or just all Swift. And even if it's 1A, 1B, that just means Swift is going to eat and then Jamal Williams is going to spell him. So I'm still fully on board with Swift. If you can buy him, you might have to, pay a high price, but if you can buy Swift, I would do it. I think he could be a league winner at running back. Wide receiver Quintez Cephas, I said he didn't have a great matchup this last week. He didn't. He kind of fell off after having 7 targets in week 1 and week 2. He had 1 target. Khalif Raymond had a 32% target share, and TJ Hawkinson only had 2 targets. So last week, I'm calling this an outlier week. I'm calling this a true outlier week for the Lions. I'm not picking up Khalif Raymond. I'm not panicking about TJ Hawkinson. I just think it was a weird week, and that's just kind of how it went. So I'm expecting Hawkinson to bounce back here, and I'm not interested in Cephas or Khalif Raymond or anyone who's not named Hawkinson or Swift in this offense. I do like the Bears defense this week. They had some success last week. Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack got a ton of sacks. So, a decent amount, not a ton. It was Myles Garrett who got a ton of sacks last week. But, yeah, so that's how I feel about that one. New York Jets hosting the Tennessee Titans. This is the Corey Davis revenge game. Elijah Moore and A.J. Brown. If either of these guys were playing, which we still don't know, it seems like A.J. Brown's going to be out. It would have been really cool to see these guys on the field, probably swap jerseys and whatever, but it's unfortunate that either of these guys are likely not going to play in this game. So let's start with the Jets, because there really isn't, literally in my notes I say I still can't trust any Jet, and that's kind of just how it goes. I'm not trusting Zach Wilson, even though it's not a terrible matchup. Michael Carter is trending in the right direction. Right? He's slowly on the rise. Tevin Coleman was a healthy scratch last week. So I don't hate Carter as the season goes on, but as of right now, I can't touch him. I can't touch Michael Carter. Wide receivers, I mentioned I don't like anyone. A little bit of a lie. Not a huge lie, but I do like Corey Davis. Okay? I do like Corey Davis. Elijah Moore is dealing with a concussion. He did not practice today. Today's Wednesday. He would have to practice in some capacity likely by Friday if he wants a chance of playing in this game. And even if he doesn't practice the entire week and is somehow past the protocol, he's probably not going to be too involved. So I would say Corey Davis is a decent start. Looking at a 7-point spread, so game script is going to be in the passing favor. It's a revenge game for him. He had 10 targets last week. And this is a game where we saw Zach Wilson struggled a lot against the Patriots. We saw he struggled a lot last week against the Broncos. But this isn't, the Tennessee defense is not all that frightening to me. So I think Zach Wilson can do enough to make Corey Davis good enough. In week 1, Corey Davis was usable. And that's kind of what I'm seeing this week from Corey Davis, especially in a revenge game. So I do like Corey Davis this week. He's probably going to be in my start list. As for the Titans, I don't like Tannehill this week, only because I don't know he's going to have to do much. We've seen games where they can let Derrick Henry the game away, and this is one of those games. I mean, with no A.J. Brown, which he's dealing with a hamstring injury, he's not going on IR, but it seems like he's going to miss this week, maybe next week. Julio Jones, also not practicing. He had an injury come up. There's a good chance that he doesn't suit up for this game. So it's really just Derrick Henry, and that's it. And that's it. I put out a tweet today, and I was like, if Derrick Henry, if AJ Brown and Julio Jones don't play, there is no Titans pass catcher that I want this week. There's no Chester Rogers or Nick Westbrook-Akeen. Like, I don't like any of these guys. It's just going to be Henry steamrolling the Jets, and that's it. Henry's going to get like 35, 40 carries. He's going to have like 200 yards, and this is just going to be a bloodbath. So I don't think Tannehill's going to have to do much, hence why I don't really like him this week. Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to move the ball without A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, arguably two of the best wide receivers in the league. A.J. Brown still has a lot to prove, but we've seen a lot from Julio. I do like the Titans defense this week as a streamer. As I mentioned, they're not all that frightening. They do have some guys who can pass rush, but for the most part, I'm just kind of banking on Zach Wilson throwing some picks, which he's been known to do. So, yeah. Next here, we have, how exciting, we have the Jacoby Brissett revenge game. How many of you guys saw that coming? Jacoby Brissett revenge game. We got the Miami Dolphins hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, Jacoby Brissett was a Colt. I don't hate him as a streamer, especially because of his rushing upside. I think the Dolphins have really lacked a rushing presence lately, so I think Jacoby's fine here. If you're I don't want to say a tight spot, but if you need to. Okay. Look, Gaskin, I would qualify him as a low-end running back too, especially in PPR, but his usage is going up, right? He's had a minimum of 5 targets each week. He had 6 this past week. That's kind of been helping him stay to a point where he's got like 7 or 8 points. He's not going too much lower than that. But he had 19 opportunities last week, 13 carries, and the 6 targets. So he's trending upwards. 13 targets is the most. 13 carries is the most he's seen this whole entire year. So he is trending in the right direction. Jalen Waddle, he ran a season high 52 routes last week, and he was playing 80% of his snaps from the slot, which was the highest. And he had 13 targets, which is a 26.5 target share, also the highest he's had this season. So Waddle had a lot of firsts last week. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Will Fuller is now back, so Waddle is allowed to kind of thrive in the slot with Fuller and Devontae Parker on the outside. 13 targets is pretty insane, and I expect that to continue. Jacoby Brissett is not a guy who wants to take a ton of shots down the field. He's just going to keep dumping it off to Waddle, and he's going to dump it off to Mike Gesicki, who I'm also going to talk about. So I'm not comfortable starting Will Fuller, who is also dealing with an injury right now, and I'm not comfortable starting Devontae Parker. Kenny Moore, he is the nickel corner for the Colts. Typically, he's pretty good, but this season he's not been great. He's been better at... Kenny Moore has been really good at defending the run, but he has not been great at covering the slot, which is what the nickel corner does. So I think Waddle can continue to have a good game here. Mike Gesicki, I mentioned him. He saw a lot of work in the slot as well, so that seems to be where Brissett is keying in on. He has a history, Brissett, I'm talking about. He has a history of supporting tight ends. We saw Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron. I'm trying to think of a couple other situations, but I know in the past he's done it as well, I swear it's there. But, so he has a history of favoring tight ends. Gesicki has seen 18 targets over the last 2 weeks. He's startable in this matchup, for sure. Wentz is getting healthier? Question mark. 2 sprained ankles. He didn't do terrible last week. This is a good matchup for Jonathan Taylor. I believe this is Miami's favorite here. Wow. But I think Jonathan Taylor can get back on track in this game. The Miami run defense has not been anything special. Peyton Barber had a day against them last week, so I think Jonathan Taylor can do the same. He has been very efficient with his touches, regardless of his snap share. So I do like Jonathan Taylor. Hines, your typical weekly desperate PPR play, I'm fine with. Michael Pittman. I liked him week 1, but I guess that was a week too early. He's on a 32.4 and 33.3 target share over the last 2 weeks. Michael Pittman's looking like an every week start. He's getting a huge target share. He's looking like the focal point of this offense. So Michael Pittman's seemingly a week-to-week start right now. No tight end I'm interested in. Zach Pascal is essentially the wide receiver 2 here, but I'm not looking at that at all. So that's what's happening there. I don't hate I mentioned I don't hate Jacoby as a streamer. I also don't hate the Colts defense because I think there's going to be a lot of short plays. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game. You can see the total here. Probably going to be some fumbles and some ugly stuff happening in this game. People are going to get their points based off volume, but this is not going to be a high-scoring game at all. So I'm okay with the Colts defense. I don't hate the Miami defense as well. Now let's look at a bigger game here. We got the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid, now out of the hospital, gets to face his former team yet again. Let's start with the Eagles. So Jalen Hurts coming off a bad matchup, a bad game, and he's talking about how if you poop in the toilet, you leave the poop alone. I don't know. There was a weird quote involving Jalen Hurts, poop, and last week's game. So if you want to check that out, you could probably just search Jalen Hurts quote. Probably not Jalen Hurts poop. Don't do that. I hope you guys respect the office mug, by the way. But yeah, so look, the Chiefs have been they've been destroyed by quarterbacks over the first 3 weeks. Baker Mayfield threw for over 300 yards, his only game this season where he's thrown for over 300 yards. Lamar had over 100 yards on the ground. He had that great comeback. Herbert threw 4 touchdowns against them last week, so I think this can be a good matchup for Jalen Hurts. And at the very least, we saw last week he got some points in garbage time, and he's got the rushing ability, so I do like Jalen Hurts in this matchup. Miles Sanders, he played 60% of the snaps last week and had 5 touches. Do you believe that? 60% of the snaps and 5 touches. They just totally abandoned the run game. It was all either Hurts scrambling or just trying to force it to Zach Ertz for some reason. But I don't hate Miles Sanders going into this week, but Kenny Gainwell is also taking away a lot of passing opportunities, which kind of limits Miles Sanders to this one-dimensional role. And then when you have a one-dimensional role in a bad game script, I don't know. I would avoid starting Miles Sanders if possible if you have another good option. But I guess I don't hate him. Devontae Smith also struggled last week. If you saw the game, he slipped on one of his routes, which was part of the reason there was a pick 6 to Trevon Diggs. Devontae Smith, his targets have not really changed much since week 1. He had 7 targets week 1, 7 targets in week 2, and he had 6 targets in week 3. So Devontae Smith is seeing about the same work. It's just about what he's going to do with that volume. They do need to throw here, as they did last week. So there is upside, but I'm going to err on the side of caution. I'm going to stay away from Devontae Smith. I'm going to stay away from all these Eagles this week. I want to see how Jalen Hurts improves. He hasn't really done anything since week 1, so I want to see that. Zach Ertz ran more routes than Dallas Goedert. Targets are all over the place. Usage is all over the place. Zach Ertz had his game last week. Goddard had a game. It's messy. It's messy. I don't want to trust either Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert. But if one of these guys get hurt, the other one's going to blow up. If Goddard gets hurt, I'll be all over Ertz. If Ertz gets hurt, I'll be all over Goddard. So if that happens, keep an eye on them. Look, Clyde, he finally had a decent week. He still fumbled, but he's ultimately still not being used as a pass catcher, and that's kind of his specialty, so it's kind of odd that they're not using him in that way. He had no targets in week 2. He had like 2 targets last week, so Clyde is also struggling in pass protection as well, which is why they have to use Darrell Williams so much. So that's another issue here. Eagles' run defense wasn't really able to hold up Zeke, but they did stop Elijah Mitchell and they did stop Mike Davis for whatever that's worth. So, if you think Clyde's better than either of those guys, take your chance. If not, I probably stay away. I didn't really mention Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, or Travis Kelce because they should all be auto starts. I know Tyreek Hill hasn't really done it the last 2 weeks, but it's Tyreek Hill, it's Patrick Mahomes. They're coming off a loss. They're 1-2 right now. They're angry, and they're going to take it off. They're going to take it all out on this poor Eagles team. So I'm all for starting these guys. I don't like either defense here. We have the Washington football team. Please change your name. Hosting the... No, that's false. We have the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Washington football team. So let's start with the Falcons. Matt Ryan, he's been all over the place. This is not a great matchup to test him. Running back-wise, traditionally not a good matchup. But Washington defense has not been as good as advertised. They should be a lot better. I don't think Chase Young has a single sack yet. Which, hey, you're playing Atlanta. Congrats, you might get one. But as far as this running back group goes, Cordell Patterson right now is a top 10 running back. But Mike Davis is still seeing more targets, more snaps, more carries, and Mike Davis is on the field for more pass blocking. So Patterson is making the most of his limited touches. I think it's more of luck, if anything, like skill and luck, right? Because he's an explosive player, but he kind of just finds himself in the right spot. Like they'll be in the red zone, give Mike Davis 3 carries, get up to like the 8-yard line, and then Cordero Patterson gets like an outside run and takes it to the house. So it's a mix of like talent and just kind of being in the right spot. So I don't hate Patterson, but I don't like him. He's a risky flex upside play, and I think Mike Davis is also pretty risky here. I would avoid if possible. I don't really see him, but as like a upside play. But he is getting enough pass volume to get you through the week. So there's that. Look, wide receivers. Calvin Ridley, he's doing his thing. You're not setting him, especially against the secondary. And there's not really anybody else worth mentioning other than Kyle Pitts. And there's better days ahead for Kyle Pitts. He played a season-high snaps, 84%. He had the highest route participation of the year at 91%. So Kyle Pitts is seeing a more and more of an expanded role every single week, whether he's getting the targets or not. That's just kind of up to Matt Ryan and what the offense is doing. I feel like the last 2 weeks it's been a lot of Patterson and it's been a lot of Mike Davis, especially Patterson. So I think that's going to swap this game. We're going to see more involvement from Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts is going to get about 15 points this week. 15. Remember that number, 15. As for Washington, look, Heineke is a decent streamer. If you're not in a tough spot, I have to stop saying the same thing over and over again, but I don't hate Tyler. I say, okay, these are the 3 things I say. If you're in a tight spot, if you're in a tough spot, or I don't hate. So I'm going to try to expand my vocabulary a little bit. You can stream Heineke this week. Sure. Running back wise, Gibson, what Gibson did last week was really encouraging. He took 1 pass to the house and it saved your fantasy week because other than that, he did not do much. He's got a better matchup here against Atlanta. They are favored in this game by 1.5 points, so that does bode well for them running it out, but we'll see. We'll see. Gibson was actually, he did do more pass blocking than McKissick did. So that's also encouraging. It was only 2-1, right? So Gibson had 2 plays where he had to pass block, and McKissick had 1 play where he had to pass block. But still cool to see that this is the only week where Gibson has actually had more of those opportunities than McKissick. So we'll see how this goes. Terry McLaurin, of course you're starting Terry. He's still getting a huge target share. He's like hovering around 30% target share with Taylor Heineke, so that's fine. Logan Thomas doing his thing as well. Definitely a decent start. Okay, this is like New Orleans versus New York Giants. These are like the 2 biggest disappointments in terms of just teams. After a strong week one, Jameis Winston just has not found his footing. He has yet to have a game where he's throwing for at least 150 yards. It's just not happening. Jameis Winston is just not doing that. I don't know if it's a combination of them running the ball, them not getting enough offensive plays. I really just don't know what is happening in this offense where they can't get anything done in the air. So I like Alvin Kamara just because he got an absurd workload last week, and I'm hoping that continues as an Alvin Kamara owner. Wide receiver wise, Marquez Callaway still acting as the team's number one wide receiver. He led the team with a 24% target share, but it's like 24% of like 15 passes. Like it's not. He literally had 4 targets last week, and that was 24%. So it's not a good spot for the Saints offense right now, unless they're gonna consistently pass the ball. If Jameis Winston's throwing the ball 40 times this game, I'm 100% starting Marquez Callaway. But the reality of it is that's just not the case. That's just not what they want to do. And considering they're at home, which I believe is their home opener, I don't know if they're going to be in the Caesar Superdome this week. I know they had some issues with Hurricane Ida, but I believe they will be 7.5 point favorites. This could be an Alvin Kamara game. This is not a game where they need to pass the ball. And look, regardless, this is a tough matchup for Marquez Callaway on the perimeter against James Bradbury. So I am staying away from Marquez Callaway. I'm staying away from these tight ends. As for the Giants, Daniel Jones, he's been great, especially with what he's been able to do on the ground. He had a drop touchdown by Darius Slayton. He's just getting no help from any of the guys around him, especially his offensive line. But Daniel Jones himself is a decent quarterback decent quarterback 2. Running back wise, Saquon Barkley, he's back. 86% of the snaps, 22 touches. He ran more routes than he did before, and he saw a season high amount of targets. And that could go up a lot more this week. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton both not practicing on Wednesday. And I don't know if either. I think Slayton's going to be out for this game. But Shepard's kind of a toss-up. So we'll see. We'll see if Shepard plays. But regardless, I think Saquon Barkley is going to get a ton of volume in the passing game, which is going to make him very usable. It's impossible to trust Kenny Golladay. And that must be so frustrating for him. I mean, he was literally out-targeted by Colin Johnson. They're like 4th or 5th string wide receiver, came in and had 7 targets last week. So I'm staying away from Kenny G. He's got a matchup against Marshawn Lattimore anyway. I'm just not feeling it. So just stay away from Kenny G this week. If Slayton and Shepard are out, there's a chance Kadarius Toney might start in the slot, but he, again, hasn't done anything to make me warrant wanting to start him. Evan Ingram, potentially worth a look. I don't know. It's just very messy team. Both very messy teams, which should bode well for defenses, right? If you're desperate for defensive streamers, New Orleans Saints streamer, definitely good. Giants defense, I think that's good too. So I like either of these defenses. It's going to be a messy game. Messy game. Dallas Cowboys at home hosting the Carolina Panthers. Dak, it seems like this Dallas offense has transitioned from passing the ball 60 times a game to running and just kind of letting their running backs control the game with Pollard and Zeke. So that's just look, it makes sense. You have Zeke under contract. You have 2 running backs who are good. You have a good offensive line. You don't have the best defense, so it kind of puts you in a position where you can run the ball and play good defense and just kind of do it that way. Look, this hurts Dallas. This hurts the pass catchers. I'm still starting Dak. I'm still starting CD. I'm still starting Amari Cooper, but I'm gonna be reserved, right? I'm gonna be cautious. Running back wise, Zeke has proved that he is the guy. Tony Pollard is nothing but a desperate flex. Tight ends here, Dalton Schultz. It's going back and forth. It's been Dalton Schultz week 1, Blake Jarwin week 2, Dalton Schultz week 3. But Schultz has looked better, and overall he's been more involved. As I mentioned, he had 2 big weeks, so I don't hate Schultz if you're in a tight spot. I don't think I've used tight spot as an adjective, or I probably have. Carolina Panthers, the Christian McCaffrey list. Carolina Panthers. I am not starting Sam Darnold this week. That Dallas defense, they're underrated this year. I mean, they're not the best, but they have made a lot of improvements, and we saw Sam Darnold kind of crumble last game without having Christian McCaffrey there. So I'm going to avoid starting Darnold. That kind of leaves Chuba Hubbard, right? Can you trust Chuba Hubbard? I think volume alone is going to get Chuba through this game. He was targeted a ton. He got enough carries on the ground. He was efficient enough. I think he had like 1 good run or so. He didn't look great. So my expectations are not that he's going to perform at a 20 to 30 point level. My expectation for Chuba Hubbard is that he gets 10 to 15 points. And if I have a Christian McCaffrey owner, I'm saying, okay, I'll take that for the week. Or if you need a flex, okay, I'll take that. But my expectations are not sky high for Chuba Hubbard. Royce Freeman, don't be surprised to see him filter in on 3rd downs as well. Wide receiver-wise, look, DJ Moore owns this team. After week 1, he's really just kind of jumped in and acted as this is like how the offense operates. He had a 35% target share last week. Terrace Marshall was the second most, tied with Chuba Hubbard at 14%. So DJ Moore runs this offense. He's a must start every single week, especially with Christian McCaffrey out. Tommy Tremble, I mentioned how they like him, but right now it's a see it before I believe it type deal. So I know he scored a touchdown last week, but I'm not starting Tommy Tremble. I don't hate the Dallas defense this week. I do not. I think we're going to see some flashbacks of Sam Darnold from the Jets. And at least that's what I saw on Thursday night. I wasn't overly impressed with anything that Sam Darnold did. Los Angeles Rams hosting the Arizona Cardinals. I believe both these teams are undefeated. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe both these teams are undefeated. Look, Matt Stafford, he's having an MVP caliber type season. Him and Cooper Kupp are hitting it off. There was an interesting article from a buddy of mine. It was Fantasy Guides, and I believe it was, I want to make sure I'm correcting this, Football Fix. So the Football Fix basically said there's been a huge discrepancy in fantasy points between Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp that not only goes against a strong historic trend, but also goes against basic logic. So the thought of Football Fix here is that teams are going to start keying in on Cooper Kupp, which is going to open things up for Robert Woods. And this may not be a terrible game for that to happen. This could be a game where the Cardinals go, okay, we want a game plan. Cooper Kupp's had 3 weeks of dominance. We need to make it an effort. We need to double team him in the slot, whatever we need to do. We need to stop Cooper Kupp. Robert Woods is still having a very high route participation. He's still getting a decent amount of targets. So I'm okay with starting Woods. Obviously starting Cooper Kupp. I do like Tyler Higbee in this matchup as well, because I think this is a matchup where it's going to be back and forth. He's going to need to. They're going to need to throw it. Running back wise, Darrell Henderson. He's expected to be back this week in a limited fashion. I don't know. I'm avoiding Henderson if possible. Sony Michel, his involvement is still going to be there, but Henderson's not 100%. If he does play, he's not going to be a workhorse. So avoiding Henderson if possible. I do like Kyler per usual. You're not setting Kyler Murray. You are sitting James Conner. After what he did last week, don't put your expectations. You're not running through Aaron Donald here. Chase Edmonds, you don't really have to worry about him because he gets his value out of being the passing game. And with Jalen Ramsey, he's moving all over the field now. But if Jalen Ramsey does shadow DeAndre Hopkins, then we might see more volume from a guy like Chase Edmonds. I do like Cooper Kupp. Not Cooper Kupp. I already talked about Cooper Kupp. I don't hate Rondale Moore. I don't hate Christian Kirk. I'm not really looking for AJ Green. So if I have to flex anyone here, it's going to be Christian Kirk. I think this is going to be a Christian Kirk type game. And Max Williams, no thank you. Neither defense I like. Neither defense I like. We got a few more games here. Let's wrap this up. San Francisco at home hosting Seattle. San Francisco actually 2.5-point favorites here. That's pretty interesting. You have Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, he can be a streamer if you need to. The Seattle secondary has been blown up over the last couple weeks, so I don't hate starting Jimmy Garoppolo here. Running back wise, I do hate this because, and I know Seattle is going to be the worst defense against running backs thanks to a 30-plus point game by Derrick Henry, and then also a big game from Alexander Mattison. So I don't know. I mean, look, Elijah Mitchell, I don't know if he's going to be the guy in San Francisco. I don't believe that they'll have the guy. I think it's going to be split between Trey Sermon and Elijah Mitchell. Kyle Juszczyk, we saw him get a ton of involvement. So I'm staying away from this backfield. I'm not going to call Elijah Mitchell a sit because he did get 19 carries in that Week 2 game. But he's coming off injury. Trey Sermon Trey Sermon looked awful, by the way. He did have a touchdown, which saved his day. A goal line carry, essentially. A wide open goal line carry. Let me correct myself. So it did save his day, but I don't know. You guys know me in this backfield. No, thank you. Just avoid it if possible. Wide receiver wise, Brandon Ayuk. He's getting back into shape. He's got a higher route participation. He's running more routes. He's playing more snaps. So Brandon Ayuk is looking to kind of get back to where he was. I don't think he's 100% back with the team just yet, right? So I got it pulled up here. So Brandon Ayuk had 86 snaps last week. He went from 54% to 86, which is right on line with where Debo is. Debo still right now is the guy in San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk caught a touchdown, which really saved his day. I would call Debo a solid mid to low end wide receiver 2, and I would call Brandon Ayuk a flex with upside in this matchup. George Kittle, of course, you're starting him. As for Seattle, look, it's getting Russell Wilson. I think last week in the second half of the game, Seattle didn't put up a single point. I mean, they've just been struggling in the second half of these games. What's really interesting to me is, although Chris Carson did have that big carry that resulted in a touchdown, he played 43% of the snaps last week. If I have Chris Carson, I'm selling high. That kind of worries me. Why is Travis Homer and Alex Collins combining for 56% of the snaps? Like, you paid Chris Carson to essentially be the workhorse here. Why is this happening? I just don't really understand. So obviously you're still starting Chris Carson just because of where you drafted him and the touches that he gets, but I just don't understand the reason for such a low usage. I mean, he really has a chance to be an absolute workhorse, and they don't really feel the same way. He had 12 carries, he had 14 touches, which for what he's been doing, that he should be way higher. He's still getting it done, so whatever, but just a little cause for concern. Wide receiver wise, Tyler Lockett had a bad game, but he also got hurt. So Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both startable this week. Gerald Everett currently on the COVID list, which leaves room for Will Dissly and Kobe Parkinson to do something. I don't know. I'm not touching this tight end group at all. I don't like either defense this week. Denver Broncos, actually 1-point favorites. Well, they are 3-0. Hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Is Teddy Bridgewater good? We still don't really know. He hasn't had a tough matchup yet. This will be really telling week. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. I'm gonna be extra careful about this week. I don't. The split is still basically even. So let me pull it up here. Melvin Gordon 54% of the snaps. Javonte Williams 41%. So this is still Gordon's backfield. Javonte Williams did get more involvement in the passing game, but not enough for unless the matchup is like fantastic, like last week against the Jets. I am just not going to start either of these running backs. Maybe Melvin Gordon because he is the 1A here, but I'm going to stay away from this backfield. Wide receiver wise, Courtland Sutton, he's got a tough matchup, but Tim Patrick, if you're in a tight spot, I think he's a great desperate start this week against Baltimore. They got to move the ball somehow. Noah Fant also, per usual, great start. As for the Baltimore side, tough matchup, but Lamar does get Rashad Bateman back, who he hasn't gotten the chance to play with during the season. And, Marquise Brown had his drop struggles last week, so, yeah, I mean, that's good for him. Could help his value. Running back wise, Tyson Williams, my mistake, guys. This is completely my mistake. My intuition over the first couple weeks was sell Tyson Williams. He's nothing special. Don't believe in Tyson Williams. And then last week, I was like, okay, he looks good. He looks good. He's got a smash spot matchup against the Lions. Start him. He still played 50% of the snaps, but he didn't do anything with it. I mean, it was Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, and him. That's the split right now. Still no word on if Le'Veon Bell is going to be elevated anytime soon, but man, it's ugly. And this is not a matchup to test it. So I'm sitting Tyson Williams. I'm also erring on the side of Marquise Brown. This is just, again, not a great matchup for him. I think, if anything, this might be a Mark Andrews type game. A Lamar running and Mark Andrews type game, but we'll see. We'll see. This Denver team is kind of unknown. They've had a string of easy matchups. Green Bay Packers at home hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers kind of just doing his thing, sitting in the pocket. Devontae Adams literally had a 56% target share last week. Every other pass, if not more, was going to Devontae Adams last week, which is absolutely nuts, but it makes sense. It makes sense. So, obviously starting Devontae Adams. Aaron Jones, also another start. No one else really from this Green Bay team really intrigues me. Rob Tanya's hit or miss every week. From the Pittsburgh side, Big Ben, knows Zadarius Smith, so that's good. But the Packers were able to get some pass rush in the second half of that game against the Lions last week. So, was it last week? No. The Packers did not play the Lions last week. They played the 49ers. They weren't able to get too much of a pass rush until later in the game. So, but, Big Ben's got no offensive line. So, I think 6.5 point favorites is appropriate for the Packers here. Big Ben's going to have trouble keeping up. Right now, Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith are not practicing. If neither of these guys play, Najee Harris could see a huge... Najee Harris had 19 targets. You probably know by now, but 19 targets for Najee Harris is absolutely insane. I think it's like a third most all-time for a running back in a single game. The name for the wide receiver is completely escaping me. Chase Claypool also had a ton of targets this week. So if it's no Deontay and no Juju, Claypool's a full go, must start, and Najee Harris is going to be a start no matter what. It's just, it looks so much better for him. Unfortunately, if Deontay's playing, he's a must start. No tight end I'm really interested in. Pat Freiermuth, he's on the rise. He's looking better. But again, I don't want to put my trust in him right now. We've approached the game that I'm dreading. If you guys do not know, I am a Patriots fan. I'm a Patriots fan. So to look at Tom Brady playing against the New England Patriots it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I don't know how to feel. I'm gonna be rooting and booing and cheering and crying, probably about the whole game. But let's talk fantasy. Let's not get into real life here. There's a lot of Gronk and Brady and Antonio Brown. I'm just gonna be real. I think the Patriots are gonna be steamrolled. I think Brady's. I think this is the most pissed Brady could be. I think he wants to stick it to Belichick. He wants to prove to the world that he can still do it. He's coming off a loss that they really needed. Man, Brady's going to destroy us, and it's not going to be close. So, I'm just thinking about that. From the Patriots side, Mac Jones is going to be under pressure this entire night. I don't think he's going to see ghosts, but I don't think he's going to have a good time either, especially with James White not in the game. James White, if you don't know, he had an injury last week. He's going to be an IR. This is going to be a combination between Damian Harris, who is not going to be able to do much against this Tampa Bay defense. Brandon Bolden stepped in and took most of the snaps, probably just because he's good at pass protection. I think this is more so going to be J.J. Taylor, and I think J.J. Taylor is going to see a bigger role. Taylor actually had a ton of targets in preseason. He was that guy for Mac Jones when it came to passing situations. So I think J.J. Taylor is going to come in and he's going to get a ton of targets. I think he's going to be that James White going forward. We'll see. For right now, I'm not starting Damian Harris, and I'm not betting on J.J. Taylor, Brandon Bolden, or Ramondre Stevenson. Wide receiver-wise, Jacoby Myers, huge target share last week. I talked about how I liked him last week in that matchup against the Saints. This week, he's got a decent matchup against Tampa Bay. Ross Cockrell, their slot corner, their nickel corner, he has not been great. We saw Cooper Kupp have a big game against him last week, and that's where, about where Jacoby Myers is going to line up. So I think Jacoby Myers in a negative game script has another chance at having a good game. I like Jacoby Myers this week again. Not trusting any of these tight ends or Nelson Aguilar or any of these guys until they actually prove themselves. Tampa Bay, you must start Tom Brady this week. He is going to destroy the Patriots. I'm not starting any of these running backs for Tampa Bay. It's too cloudy right now. I think even if the Buccaneers are winning like 20-0 at halftime, Brady's still going to come in and wheel the ball for the rest of the game. You know that's going to happen, right? So I like Mike Evans. I like Chris Godwin. I like Antonio Brown. I love Gronk. And yeah, man, it's going to be bloodbath. I don't even want to get into like specifics about Chris Godwin playing in the slot, and then you have Mike Evans on the outside. Where's Antonio Brown going to line up? Just start him and just feast your eyes on the bloodbath. I'm fine starting the Tampa Bay defense. And as a Patriots fan, maybe I'm overreacting to Brady or under. I'm kind of like in a position where I'm like, okay, Bill Belichick can do more than that. And I think he could. This game is being played in New England. There is a chance that if anybody's going to know how to beat Tom Brady, it's going to be Bill Belichick. But man, this is just going to be such a game to watch. This is going to be a game for the ages. I hope you guys are ready. I hope it's not a blowout. I hope it's a good game. I hope Mac Jones actually shows something, because he did not show anything last week against the Saints. We'll see. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm kind of flustered by this game, I guess you could say. All right, let's move on. Oh, is that the Thursday night game for Week 5? Ooh, Seattle and LA. That's a good one. Okay, we're on Week 4. So, Los Angeles Chargers hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Chargers are favored in this game, even with Vegas being 3-0. Yeah, I don't really think Vegas is a real 3-0 team. We'll see. Maybe they prove me wrong. They've played a couple really good games. Justin Herbert, I love him in this matchup. Austin Eckler, I love. Keenan Allen, I love in this matchup. Mike Williams, I also love in this matchup. And that's about it. Jared Cook, he's kind of there in the background, but he's not doing enough to be startable. Mike Williams still playing like a wide receiver 1. Keenan Allen still getting that elite target share. Austin Eckler still looks great on the ground, and he's getting that target share. So I'm fine with starting those guys. Derek Carr, I think this is going to be a shootout. 52 is likely appropriate here. So I do like Derek Carr in this game. Josh Jacobs, as of right now, he is questionable. We don't know if he's going to play or not. If we don't know by Sunday, if we have no idea, then just bench him, right? Because we have to wait until Monday night. It's going to be last minute, and they'll be like, oh, guess what? He's out. So if you don't hear by the beginning of the Sunday games, just sit Josh Jacobs. And if Josh Jacobs does sit, Peyton Barber may not be a terrible option. He had like 20 carries last week against the Miami Dolphins. He had himself a pretty good game, so surprisingly enough, Kenyon Drake will never be a workhorse on this team. And that being said, I'm not a huge fan of Kenyon Drake in this game. Wide receiver-wise, Henry Ruggs How about that? He's had the same amount of targets as Darren Waller over the last 2 weeks. So Henry Ruggs is getting very much involved in this offense. I do like Ruggs this week. I will start him as a flex option. Hunter Renfrow, also very consistent over the last couple weeks. I'm starting Hunter Renfrow if you're desperate. And Darren Waller, he's doing his thing. He hasn't had any explosive games since week 1, but he's still Darren Waller, so I'm still starting him. I don't like either defense here, really. And that's going to do it. I'm so I don't know if excited is the right word for this one, but I just need this game to happen on Sunday night. I'm excited for week 4. Hopefully you guys are doing good. Look, if you're 0-3, it's not over yet, okay? It's not over yet. Most teams do have 3 losses by the time the season's over, so just think of it that way. You can place those losses anywhere during the season, but you just really need to win now, okay? Because if those turn into 4 and 5 losses, then you're like, all right, let me take a step back. If you've gotten to week 5 and you haven't won yet, you need to start doing something drastic. Even now, you should start trying to do trades and, start the risky upside plays. Do whatever you need to do. You need to win now. So make whatever effort you need to do that and make the playoffs. All right, so thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. And I'll see you next week for week 5. Ooh, week 5. Wow, it's really coming fast. But all right, see you guys.